So this is lesson 2 of making the most of the money God entrusts to us. And we said in lesson 1, there are 3 lessons. One is on perspective, having a big enough why. One is on people, and one is on the process. So this lesson is on the people who will have an impact on how you manage the money God entrusts to you, because people are going to be an issue. Why is a big issue. If you don't have a big enough why, you won't do it. But people are going to oppose you as well, and we need to deal with that. And that includes you, some of the objections you yourself will give. So this lesson is designed to help you overcome your own objections to managing your money well and to the objections people will give to you. At the end of this lesson, there is an addendum with a lot of articles. And I'm going to refer to some of those articles as I go over this, but I wanted those to be in your notes for the future. These are articles that I got from Dave Ramsey on some of the things we'll be talking about. So I want to make sure you know that it's there so you can refer to it later. The first person's objections that you must deal with is yours. So we're going to talk about you. In this first part, we're going to talk about the struggle you're going to have with yourself. Personal finance is 80% behavior and 20% head knowledge. And you need to know that because the average person says budgeting is way over my head. It's not way over your head. Budgeting is not about all the massive information you have. It's about your own behavior. Some people say they cannot do a budget because they are not good at math. Budgeting is 4th grade math. And if you do an online app, it's not even 4th grade math. It's just your behavior that needs to be changed. The problem with budgeting is the person you see in the mirror every morning. That's your biggest problem in budgeting. I put there Romans chapter 7, verse 15 on down through verse 25. Basically just saying, I'm frustrated with myself. That's what Paul is saying in those verses, isn't he? I'm frustrated with myself. And you may be frustrated with yourself. Because the truth is, if the person in the mirror can behave, budgets can and will work. It's just the person in the mirror. Are they going to behave or not? Changing the money thing begins with changing the person in the mirror. You can change. You must change. You can get out of debt. You can invest in your future. And you can give as generously as you want to if you control the person in the mirror. There are many competing reasons to have a budget. Compelling reason. There are many compelling reasons to have a budget. You should have a budget because you will see where your money is really going. I don't know how many times I have sat down with people and they have made a statement that when we start working on their finances, that they have made a statement, I did not know I was making this much money. Where did it all go? They're even mad at themselves because they didn't know they were making that much money. You should have a budget because with it, you will be able to accomplish your financial goals. And that's huge to really understand that. You will accomplish your financial goals. Budgeting is not doing what I want you to do. Budgeting is sitting down and saying, what are my goals and how am I going to reach them? And making the decisions today that help you reach your financial goals in the future. So budgeting is all about reaching your goals, whatever those goals are. You should have a budget because with it, your fears about your financial future will decrease. And budgeting is really easier than you fear. It's really easier than you fear. People do have a fear of the future in retiring, and they should. If you read the articles right now of people retiring, they have so little in retirement, and they are scared to death of their future. But if you do budgeting, you don't have to be scared to death of your future. Over the long haul, budgeting is financial freedom, not financial bondage. It's freedom. People think that a budget is so restricting, but a budget is based on your financial goals, not somebody else's, yours. So it's freedom. My wife and I have had a budget forever, and when she goes to the store, she just looks at how much is in their grocery account, and she knows that she can spend everything that's in that account. So she knows what she can spend. When we go out to dinner, we know we can't afford it. When we buy a Christmas present for somebody, we do not have the February surprise. And how are we going to get past this when that February bill comes for what you charge for Christmas? It really is financial freedom. B, change begins with acknowledging that the way you are handling your finances is not working. Now let me define for you what I mean by is not working. To do budgeting correctly, to manage your finances correctly, you need a budget, you need an emergency fund, you need 3 to 6 months income in a savings account, You need to be contributing to your retirement program, and you need to be contributing to your children's college program. All those. And you have to answer that question. How many of those things are in place? Are all those things in place and working? This is not a fun realization. The money problems, worries, and shortages largely begin with the person in the mirror. If you're ready to take on the person in the mirror, you can win with money. You can say, okay, I am going to do this. Your situation isn't your spouse's fault. It isn't your parents' fault. It isn't your children's fault. It isn't your friend's fault. All of them have an impact, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But once the person in the mirror is under control, you can control everyone else. The good news means this. The good news is that this means if you're the one who got you into this mess, you're also the one who can get you out. So even if it's your fault, you can still make the decisions to say, we're going to get out of this. No law needs to be written. No politician's promise is needed. No government handout or will permanently fix your financial problems. No fantastic love offering that a church gives you is going to take you out of your money problems. It will only give you a temporary relief. And as pastors, we saw this constantly, that we would raise a lot of money for a missionary and we would see them squander it and not get to the field. And that is very, very frustrating. Because you think, I'm going to go charge all this, and the love offering is going to cover all that. Because I always said to missionaries, because if you came to my missions conference, you got around $10,000 to $15,000 when you left. And I would have them stand up on the platform and say, tell everybody what you're going to do with it. Because I want them to know this is going to go to ministry. And then I would say, okay, that's what we expect to hear. Because I saw so many of them just squander it and not get to the field at all. One of the biggest hindrances to change is denial. People just don't admit they have a problem. Most people think they're doing fine because it is normal to be in debt and to use debt to clean up debt. Because what do you do when your credit cards are maxed out? Get another credit card. We always have a debt answer for debt, and that doesn't work. Most people do not find out how flawed their lack of financial plan is until they are so deep in debt, there seems no way out. The Wall Street Journal says that 70% of America lives paycheck to paycheck. That means it doesn't take much of a crisis to knock people out. If you live paycheck to paycheck, any little thing is a crisis. It's an emergency. It's interesting. Statistics show us that only 32% of American adults have a budget, which means 68% of the adult Americans do not have a budget. And 70% live paycheck to paycheck. Do you think there might be a correlation there? You think people live paycheck to paycheck because there's no budget in place, so one little thing can knock you out? It usually takes pain to change. Change itself is painful. So that means very few people have the courage to change because change is painful. Most people won't change until the pain, to the level of pain, exceeds the level of change. I mean, when the pain gets high enough that you're willing to go through the pain of change, and you'll finally change. But why wait for the pain to make the change? You are where you are financially as a sum total of all the financial decisions you have made to this point. Every financial decision you have made to this point has led you to where you are financially right now. Changing the decisions about how you handle your finances is going to be painful but successful. If a financial plan includes debt, change is needed. If your financial plan includes debt, change is needed. To change, you need to fight the battle of fiscal immaturity, which we talked about a little bit in the first lesson. It is the human nature to want it all and to want it now. That kind of human nature is sadly the sign of a financially immature America, because we want it all and we want it now. Being willing to delay pleasure for a greater result is a sign of financial maturity. Our culture teaches us to live for now. And we scream, I want it all and I want it now. And to get everything we want requires us to go debt and deeply in debt. Debt is a financially immature way to obtain what you want before you can't afford it. And we want to get you on that mature plan. Change starts with realizing that you are ignorant about money management. And I'm just telling you, we never learned it. It's not because we're idiots. Well, we just never learned it. And we got to find a place to learn that. No one is born financially smart. Ignorance is not a lack of intelligence. It's just a lack of know-how. We've got to get the know-how. How much were you taught about money in high school and college at home? How much did you really get? Like I said, I was very fortunate to be raised by budgeting parents who taught us budgeting, but that's rare. Most people get their knowledge about money management from the people who want to get rich by telling you debt is the way to go. What you do not know about money management will make you broke and keep you broke. That's why you want to learn the principles. Don't beat yourself up about what you were never taught. Instead, get smart about money instead. See, you and you alone control the rest of your life. That's why getting that person in the mirror under control is important. You and you alone control the rest of your life. Just remember, everyone must budget. Everyone must plan for retirement. Everyone must do estate planning. And it's just time for you to get started doing it right now. The quality of your life, your spouse's life, your children's life, and the life you will have at retirement depends on you becoming an expert in money management today. It's going to affect everybody in your life. D, 5 common reasons that keep people from getting out of debt. And as I go over these 5, which one are you? And by the way, this is one of the ones in the addendum that's a full article. It has much more explanation of that. But here's the top 5 reasons people don't get out of debt. Number 1, you want to keep up appearances in front of family and friends. And because you want to keep up appearances, you spend money you don't have. You're unwilling to sacrifice. No, I'm not willing to do without. You fear change. You're addicted to stuff. More than once, we have seen people's garages filled with clothes that have never been worn. I know of one couple, their entire garage, and as their children left home, they would take their bedrooms and put clothes racks in them and just hang up clothes that had never been worn. Just because they were addicted to stuff, they'd go to the store and buy and buy and buy and just accumulated all that stuff. Number 5, you're too lazy to budget. You got to decide which one are you. If you don't have a budget right now, which one of those reasons? Those are the top 5. Now let's talk about the objections that come from your family. So we know that we got to get the person in the mirror under control. Now let's talk about the people in your family. If you're married, start by working with your spouse. We have to talk about the issues in marriages. Husbands and wives must work together on a budget for the budget to work. You have to work together. Spouses are different people with different financial goals. So what you have to do is recognize your differences and then keeping on a budget that works for you with the two people that are in your marriages. Disagreements are a normal part of the process, so don't let them stop the process. Disagreements are normal. You're two different people with two different backgrounds. You approach money two different ways. So it's normal to disagree at first. That's fine. But just keep working on it till you get a budget that works for you. Disagreements can be resolved if both spouses have the same end goals in mind. One of the things we'll talk about in the calls is, the Skype calls, is end goals. Where are we headed? Where do we want to be? Once we get agreement on that, it's much easier to put a budget together. It's hard to put a budget together without an agreement about where we are going. Conflict is inevitable, but drama is a choice. You're going to have conflict, but you don't have to have the drama if you say, where are we? How can we make this work for us? Most couples come into the marriage with different life experiences, and that's what's going to cause you to have disagreements and conflict that you need to work out. We all have life experiences and bents that affect our finances. Now, I gave you a handout called the 5 Money Personalities, and this is from Scott and Bethany Palmer, if you want to take a look at that as I go over this. And they've identified 5 different styles here. The first is the saver. I am a saver because my parents grew up in the Depression, and so they believed in saving, so I have been a saver. But here's what a saver looks like. Gets a rush from saving money. Rarely spends money impulsively. Avoids credit card debt. Can be overly focused on financial goals. Sometimes there's no flexibility because the goal is everything and you can't do anything now to mess with that goal. Come across as cheap because you don't have everything everybody else does. That's a typical saver. Could be a spender. The spender tends to live in the moment. We'll figure this out later. I'm just going to spend this right now. Loves to buy things for other people. Gets a thrill from the purchase. Can be impractical. Buys things without a reason and tends not to look for the best deal. They tend to be non-communicative. Don't think or talk to their spouse about a purchase. In fact, they tend to hide purchases. Come across as a budget breaker. Then there's a risk taker. Loves the thrill of jumping into a financial challenge. Even when something does not pan out, they're ready for the next financial adventure. Big picture people. They don't care about the details. Aren't afraid to make decisions. Blinded by possibilities. They're blinded to facts by just what the possibilities are. They're impatient. Can be insensitive to anyone who does not share their excitement about what they're doing, investments or anything else. Then you have the security seeker. Like to know the future is settled and safe. Investigates before committing. Willing to sacrifice today for security tomorrow. Can be overly negative. Can have paralysis by analysis. They can never make a decision because they're still analyzing. Then you have the flyer. The flyer loves an unconventional life and will not have it any other way. Doesn't think about money when making decisions. They're not anxious or consumed about their finances. Basically content with their life, even if living in a broken down trailer. That's okay. Whatever happens, just happens. Happy to let somebody else take care of the finances. Yeah, you just take care of this. I don't want nothing about it. Not motivated by money. Not going to make a decision based on this is a better job, a better place to live, those kind of things. Can be known for lacking in the skills needed to solve their money problems. Now, of these top 5 money styles, you have to decide who are we? I'm this, and then what we're going to do about it. Because you just have to decide what your bent is. Then after you find out what that bent is, you have to say what are our end goals and how we're going to reach that. But you're going to come at it 2 different ways. And again, there's much more help in this in the addendum if you look at those articles in there. What you do is you focus on the enemy of your finances and find the root problem. The focus is not their style. That's just their style. Okay, that's not the enemy. The enemy is our finances. Let's attack them. Okay, we have this style, you have this style. How are we going to make those styles work in our budgeting process? Be willing to compromise. If it's your way or the highway, you won't have a budget that you're both committed to. And that's the key. The reason you need to work together is because you both want to work the budget, and you won't both work the budget if you don't work on it and make some compromises. I saw a t-shirt driving down here, and I thought this is so true. It said this: if we don't see eye to eye, we're going to go toe to toe. And sometimes that happens in budgeting. If you don't see eye to eye, it creates an argument. It creates a fight. Always keep your end goals in mind. And we're going to deal with end goals in our calls. What are your end goals? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What does retirement look like for you? Do you ever want to own a home? Do you want to be debt-free? Do you want to save for the next car and pay cash? What do you want to do about your kids' college expenses? Every financial decision you're making now is going to have an impact on those goals. And most people don't think about end goals until it's too late. They think about what they're going to do with their kids when they go to college, when they're a senior in high school. It's a little late to save much for somebody when you start thinking about when they're a senior in high school what you're going to do. Retirement's the same way. Openly communicate and agree upon goals to work together. We need that communication to take place. Solving financial problems together leads to solving other problems together. Both husband and wife spend money, therefore, they both must be a part of creating and maintaining a budget. That's so critical. One person has a tendency to say, I don't want anything to do with it, but then they get mad when they're told no. And then they want to look at the inconsistencies in what the other person is doing. But that won't happen if you work together. We both spend money. We are both going to work on this. So we're both going to say, what are we going to do? Because when crisis comes, you've got to make cuts. And so you have to work together where cuts are made. I deal with people all the time where the inconsistencies are tearing them apart. One lady came in and she said, we never go out to dinner. And he just said, here's the budget. You figure out where we're going to have money to go out to dinner. And she said, but you go out with the men from the office every day for lunch. A little bit of an inconsistency. Okay? And those kind of things have to be worked on. Yeah, you can show on paper why this can't happen, but you haven't discussed it and talked about everything that's happening, why this is being funded, why this is not being funded. Both people have to be a part of it. Cuts have to be made, and if both do not see the need for the cuts and agree on the cuts, the budget will not work. It is worth the time and effort to work together on a budget. Because remember, budget is financial freedom, not financial bondage. It is still true that financial stress is the number one reason for divorce, so we need to solve this. Spouses don't want to talk about finances, but you have to. You can learn to talk, and you can learn to agree. Once a budget is agreed upon, it is in writing. Promise each other that you will never do anything with money that is not on your budget paper. How do husbands and wives work together? If you work together on a budget, then you can make that promise, I'm not going to do anything outside of this budget. But if you don't have that you've worked on together, then it's always going to be a source of problems. If something comes up in the middle of the month that requires a budget change, call an emergency budget committee meeting. You can change the budget only if two things are agreed upon. One, both spouses agree to the change, and you must still balance your budget. So you have an emergency that comes in. You say, okay, we have got to get these tires on the car. We have got to come up with $400 or whatever it is to get those tires in the car. Where's it going to come from? And so you make those changes, but you say we're going to take some money from here, some money from here, some money from here, and you agree on that so your budget still balances. Sometimes couples think their money problems can be solved with separate checking accounts. This is a bad idea, because when that happens, you stop working together. Here's the deal. When you got married, you became a team. When the pastor of the church got up and said, and now we are one, he meant it. It's called unity. You made a vow that pledged all your worldly goods to each other. In other words, you said, we're all in, so combine the checking accounts. When his money is over there and her money is over here, it's easy to live in your own little financial world instead of working together as a team. And remember, a team is a we. When you do your spending together, it's about our money. We have our income. We have our expenses. We have our goals. It's not separate. When both are in agreement on where the money is going, then you've taken a major step to being on the same page in your marriage, and you can create awesome levels of communication in other areas. If finances is the number one reason for divorce and you can solve that gives you a basis for solving everything else. It's huge. B, after mom and dad are on the same page, it's time to bring the children into the picture. We need to talk about kids and what kids do in budgeting. Children bring a lot of stress on budget. First of all, it's because they're children. And all they know is what they want it now. We understand it and we want to teach them something, but they can bring stress in on that level. All their friends have what they want, and because all their friends have it, they should have it too, so they want you to spend money the way they want you to spend money. But children are not the only ones that put a strain on a budget. Parents put the strain as well because they want their children to be able to participate in everything. And so they let their kids be involved in everything in school, all the sports, all the clubs, everything that's going on, because parents feel the pressure not to deprive their kids of anything. But if parents are not watchful, activities like sports and music and clubs and hobbies can take over the family, as well as tourist activities on deputation can do the same thing. We've kind of talked about that. But activities can dominate family time, activities can dominate the family budget, and activities can dominate and trump spiritual decisions like church attendance. We've got to be careful of those activities. When a financial crisis hits, parents can look at the crisis as a teaching opportunity for their children. A lot of times when a financial crisis hit, the parents don't even involve the kids. We say we want the kids not to know anything that's going on, everything is fine. But if it's your job to teach your children how to manage money, and a crisis comes, what a great teaching opportunity that is to say, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to say, here's what's happened. And you talk your kids through what went on. So they understand this is financially a rough time. This is, cuts are going to have to be made, and this is a good lesson for them to learn. What you do is you explain to your children what happened. Somebody got sick. It's caused a lot of bills. Car broke down. House needs a roof. Somebody lost a job, lost hours. Okay? Daddy doesn't have as many hours at work as he used to. And because of that, we have got to make cuts. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make these cuts. Daddy's going to look for another job so that he can find another job that's going to pay the bills. Until that happens, we're going to make all these cutbacks. What have you done for them? You have told them, here's how to handle a financial crisis. If you just keep charging, then what have you taught them? When bad financial times come, get a credit card. You don't want to teach them that. Use it as a teaching opportunity. Next is the relatives. See there? Relatives come with expectations. You have family get-togethers. You have Christmas present traditions. You have vacation destinations. With family, you get a lot of pressure. A married couple's first priority is to their family. They have the opportunity to stop family traditions that are hard on their budget. Chances are, your relatives that are doing a lot of things they're doing are doing it on credit. You don't want to do it on credit. So you're going to have to say, we're going to start some new traditions. Of course, you want to love and honor parents and siblings, but not at financial risk to your family. Lovingly explain what you can and what you cannot do. We would love to go on the family vacation to the lake like everybody's done for the last 156 years. But in our financial situation right now, we just can't do that. And we'll try to work it in later, but we just cannot do that. A conversation like that's going to have to take place. Your long-term financial security and the lessons you're teaching your children are at risk. The truth is, every adult at some point will have to say no to their parents, their siblings, and extended family. Make that statement sooner rather than later. Make that statement before you get head over heels in debt. Then have to make that statement after you have all the debt that you have to pay off as well. Number 3, now it's time to talk about the objections that come from people you know. I want to call this section, You Can't Keep Up with the Joneses, and you'll see why in a minute. But remember, you've got pressures from you, you've got pressures from your family, and you have pressure from other people as well. If you choose to eliminate debt, you'll be out of step with the people you know. Remember that. If you choose to be out of debt, you're going to be out of step. And what do people do with people who are out of step? They give you a hard time, right? If you're out of step, then they're going to give you a hard time. Part of it is because they're in debt and they don't want to deal with it themselves. So they're going to give you a hard time. Debt is the way of life in the world. Sometimes our philosophy can be to go along to get along. Well, we don't want to be in debt, but everybody else is doing that. Let's just go along and do that, and you find yourself in debt as a result. We participate in what the crowd identifies as normal. We do what they do, even if it makes no sense, because we gain acceptance. So we're after their acceptance, so we're going to do everything they're doing. We do what they do because we have been taught it's just the way you do it, and so we never ask why. Debt has been sold to all of us so aggressively, so loudly, and so often that most people cannot imagine living without debt. And you're out of step. And so they're going to give you a hard time. People cannot envision a car without a payment, a house without a mortgage, a college education without a loan, and a wallet not loaded with credit cards. Sure, you can do this. You got a credit card. We're all going to put it on our credit. Just do it. We have been sold debt with such repetition and with such fervor that most people cannot conceive of what it would be like to have no payments. And they can't believe that you want to be there. Peer pressure is powerful, and that makes living debt-free among friends hard. We are scaling down is a painful statement to make to friends and family. We have to pass on that trip or dinner because it's not in our budget. It's virtually impossible for some people to say. Decide now to buck peer pressure so you can begin to win with money. But be prepared for criticism, for ridicule, and we'll see how long this will last statements from your friends because they don't know any other way to live. Remember one thing, the Joneses are broke. Keeping up with the Joneses is not going to work because the Joneses are broke. Behind the nice house, the new car, the fantastic vacations, you'll find people head over heels in debt. They don't want to deal with it, and they don't want you to put pressure on them to change. Now, some can afford their lifestyles, and good for them, but that does not mean you have to keep up with them. One of my favorite stories about that is I went to a church to work with a financial board and putting the church on a budget, And while I was there, I did some messages in church on budgeting, and then during the week I worked with some families in the churches on their budget. And I remember driving up to this phenomenal house with 2 beautiful cars sitting outside, and go into the house and find out this guy is the owner of a newspaper in town, a very large newspaper in town, and they're having great financial problems. And we sat down and I said, okay, let's just start with basics here. Do you balance your bank statement? And they said, no, we've never balanced a bank statement. And I said, what do you do? He says, well, we go to a bank, and this is true for his business and for him personally. We go to a bank, we open an account, and we just put money in it and write checks off of it. And then when the bank sends us a notice that we're overdrawn, we go to another bank and open an account and just start all over at that bank there. That was their financial plan. You can't believe the stories I've heard about how people manage money, successful business people, and how they don't manage their money. And so we live in that kind of a world, and we just have to say, I'm not going to try to keep up with them. If people can afford to do fun and fantastic things, great, go do fun and fantastic things. Doesn't mean I have to go head over heels in debt to do it. Dr. Tom Stanley, in his book, The Millionaire Next Door, stated that the typical millionaire found infinitely more motivation from the goal of financial security than what friends and family thought. And that's what you have to get to. What are my end goals? They trump what my family and friends, the pressure they're putting on me. And again, there's some great articles in your addendum that talk about how to deal with the objections of people. Anytime you make a decision to start or stop something, you will face obstacles from yourself and others. And we know that's true, don't we? This includes attending church. When people started attending church, there were issues. Tithing was an issue. Dieting is an issue. Budgeting is the same kind of thing. Anytime we start or stop something, we face obstacles from ourselves and others. Recognize what the obstacles and objections are, what you could face, and prepare for them. You know what your obstacles and objections are, but what could family say? What could friends say? And have an answer for that. Now, the assignment for this lesson, we're all couples in here right now. Look at the page that says an evaluation of money management for couples. Now, this is designed to help the two of you see what each other is like. You're going to fill this out twice, once for yourself and once for your spouse. So when you fill this out, which is not right now, when you fill this out, you'll do 2 complete sets. Once for you, like you look at question 1. Not perfect, but does a pretty good job handling money most of the time. And you rate 1 to 10. Is that true? Well, 80% of the time or whatever. And then whatever comments you have. So you'll fill this out, then you'll fill it out a second time for your spouse, and then we'll work together on putting that together. What are your styles, and how do we make that work? But if you're going to do a good job on handling your money well, you have to have a big enough why from perspective, and you have to be able to handle the objections of yourself and your family and others.